Ole Miss is going to overcome Wake Forest and potentially the weather for their playoff dreams. This is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to today's Locked On Ole Miss podcast. I'm your host, Steven Willis, a 10-year veteran member of the national media and, of course, an Ole Miss staff member as well, formerly. On today's episode, we're gearing up for Ole Miss's big matchup against the Wake Forest Demon Deacons, and we have special Know Your Enemy guest, Kenton Gibbs from Locked On ACC is going to be joining the show. We're breaking down all the main storylines, the players to watch on both sides, and, of course, we'll give you our predictions for the game. You will not want to miss it. And don't forget to check out Chris Gordy of Locked On SEC or Zach Blackerby from Locked On Auburn, the grandson of Carol Blackerby, by the way, the most famous Wake Forest football player of all time. Seriously. Zach is the GOAT in the Locked On network, and just wanted to throw that in there as well. You know, we're free and available on all the podcast apps and on YouTube. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day, and a special hello to the insiders and everydayers who make this show what it is. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. So Ole Miss versus Wake Forest in Winston-Salem, North Carolina on Saturday at 5:30 Central Time, right in between a very special Dawson's Creek and the season premiere of Arrow. You can catch it on the CW. It should be a pretty interesting game. Ole Miss is actually stepping up in competition. I talked to Dalton Wasserman from PFF just last night. He really liked Hank Bachmeier, but he did mention that there was nobody else on that offense that is grading up above 75. And when you've played North Carolina A&T and a Virginia team that is not particularly good, that could at best be problematic. And when you throw in the weather, which has a potential to be, let's say, less than good, the nighttime forecast is a 50% chance of rain. That has not changed since last night, although the wind percentages have gone up because it was at about 5 miles an hour. Now they're projecting 9 miles per hour, and that's coming down from the wind in the daytime at 12 miles an hour, but the chance of rain isn't quite there. It looks like that as the course of the day, it's kind of drifting to where it's getting to Winston-Salem later and later. I figure by kickoff, you might be looking at what the daytime forecast is, and maybe it could be clear because it's a little bit slower getting there. But as it sits right now, it's looking for a little bit of wind and a little bit of rain, which is going to be problematic for the quarterbacks, Jaxson Dart and Hank Bachmeier. But it'll be problematic for the special teams. It'll be problematic for spots, the wide receivers. The weather elements in this game are going to play a factor. We'll just have to see exactly how that goes, but it's going to play a factor. Anyway, without further ado, we're going to take you into Thunderdome. We are breaking out Thunderdome for the first time this season. Kenton Gibbs from Locked On ACC. Here we go. Let's go. We are back in Thunderdome for the first time this year. Kenton Gibbs from Locked On ACC is nice enough to join us because there's not a Locked On Wake Forest, but I'm sure they're working on that at the moment. But Kenton Gibbs, man, how are you doing, buddy?
You know, I'm always great to see you. You know, anytime us two Tigers fans can get together and talk some ball, you know, it's great. By the way, we're talking about the Detroit Tigers, okay? We're not talking about Clemson and LSU. We talk about the Detroit Tigers. We talk about some diamond right now. But anyway, I'm always good to see you, Steven. I'm always excited, man. And I'll tell you what, Ole Miss has what a squad this year. What a squad. What a bunch of transfers. What a bunch of recruits you all have. This should be a special year. And I am, again, always great to see you, brother. Always.
Well, I appreciate that very much. It's always good to have you back on the show. And being an SEC guy and you being an ACC guy, I almost need one of these ACC schools that don't have a broadcaster to have you on the show. So I do appreciate that a whole bunch. You
Absolutely.
know, we had Dalton Wasserman from PFF on my show last night. And we were talking about Jaxson Dart and his 87% completion percentage through 2 games, his 30 passes completed in a row. And honestly, his year is going along better than even the most homerish of Ole Miss fans can think of, because I'm going to tell you something right now, Ken. Auburn could not complete 10 passes in a row against air. 30 passes against the defense, that's nothing to sneeze at. I don't care if it is Furman. I don't care if it isn't Middle MTSU.
Well, I mean, completing passes against MTSU shouldn't be seen as that easy of an accomplishment, because didn't they beat a couple of Power 4 teams last year? Miami being one of them. So,
they scared Missouri. Yeah.
Okay, they scared Missouri, beat Miami, but that's what I mean, right? That's a legitimate program. Like, you say what you want about the guys. I believe it's Murfreesboro, Tennessee. You say what you want about the guys from Murfreesboro. They play some ball. They play the Blue Raiders play some ball. So, to see Jaxson Dart look the way that he looks, and granted, Middle Tennessee State's never been known for their defense. That's never been a thing. We get that, but that is, that's still a legitimate program. And I'll tell you, the thing about Jaxson Dart that I think, and him in a Lane Kiffin offense that I think is so interesting, you can tell not only is he fully comfortable, the receivers are fully comfortable. Everybody is setting in to the philosophy, to the scheme, to the ins and outs, to the, hey, I need to sit this route down right here. No, I need to push this thing with pace before I sit it, all that type of stuff. So, I mean, objectively speaking, it is amazing to see that type of accuracy, and again, that sync with the receivers.
I think you're going to agree with me on this, because you were on Twitter a little bit talking about, because Grayson McCall at NC State's going through some stuff right now.
Yes.
But year one quarterbacks out of the transfer portal, rentals, they're horrible ideas. Just don't do it, because there's too much for them to pick up, too much of a relationship to build. You need somebody that's been in the system. And I'm not saying that you need to go find a high school quarterback, but Jaxson Dart in 2022 was not the guy that Jaxson Dart is in 2024.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And when you talk about that, to me, I don't care if it's high school or 2-year, 3-year guy. Whatever it is, you need to have guys for multiple years. And Jaxson Dart, I believe, is a prime example of that. Because not only are you looking at a guy who has grown in his understanding of the system, of the scheme, okay, we want to hit this at this point, and this is how we see this. He also just looks more confident. He looks more sure of himself in his decision-making. There's these moments where quarterbacks like to burp the baby a little bit. And, oh, man, am I sure that I don't see those from Jaxson. And granted, you could say it's through 2 games against lesser opponents or whatever, but I'm telling you, as somebody who is seeing bad quarterback play, I have seen people burp the baby against Western Carolina. Okay, so I'm telling you right now, I think the Jaxson Dart, I believe this is year 3 at Ole Miss for him.
Mm-hmm.
Year 3, he looks fully confident. He looks fully comfortable, and y'all have the talent around him to do something really special this year.
Yeah, and the one thing that is a theory that's kind of going through my head right now through 2 weeks, it hasn't been fully formed, but it's just a theory at this point. I think Jaxson Dart being year 3, but also helmet communication. I don't know what they're saying, but I think Lane Kiffin is using that, and they figured out a way to use that to their advantage, because Jaxson Dart in his whole career had 5 games over 70% completion percentage. Mm-hmm. In 2 games, he's done both of them and has an 87% completion percentage. Year 3 is a big thing, but I do think this technology thing has a role to play as well.
Oh, absolutely. Lane Kiffin is an NFL guy now. Let's be very honest about that. Lane Kiffin has coached all over the place, including in the league where helmet communication is the standard. So while he has been a guy who's adapted his game to work out for college, work out for NFL, work out for whatever, that helmet communication is something that, some of these college coaches are having to figure it out for the first time, because they're like, we've never used it. We've never done it. This is a very new stimuli for us. How do we react to it? As opposed to Lane, who's like, oh, yeah, been there, done that. This is old hat. Hey, this is how we're going to execute this. This is how we're going to call it. And this is what you're going to hear. This is what you need to be leery of, and all that type of stuff.
I'm sorry. Whatever you were just doing that, you sounded like Coach 30, whatever you're doing. We never did it. And that's all I could think of. That was pretty good. All right, so let's turn the page a little bit, because this is the Know Your Enemy episode, and we're going to talk about Wake Forest a little bit. First question, does Wake Forest have a real chance?
So I would love to say yes. I would love to say, oh, man, there's a shot here and all that. I would be shocked if this game was within 2 touchdowns. I honestly would be shocked, because Wake Forest has shown some deficiencies defensively that I'm not sure they'll be able to keep up with Ole Miss offensively. But here's the other part. I think Damon, their running back, he's a really, really good player. He's a special guy. But when I look at that offensive line and in tandem with him, and I look at the defense that they're going to be playing against with Ole Miss, with some of the best transfers rather, in the nation coming in, the D tackle from Texas A&M is the first one that comes to mind. Superstar, stud. That he's watching his tape brings me joy because he legitimately. I heard that he played with bad leverage sometimes, and that his hand placement wasn't necessarily where it needed to be all the time. And I watched this film, and I said, "Oh, I see. I get it. I get why he gets lazy sometimes because when he's on it, technique-wise, you cannot stop that young man. He is as unstoppable of a force as there is in the middle of a college football defense." And so I go forward from there, and I say, will Claiborne be able to run against them? I doubt it. I highly doubt it. Will Hank Brockenmeyer be able to find enough time? That's another very, very tough go for them. And a secondary at Ole Miss, which at times in the past has been very rightfully maligned, they seem to have figured it out on the back end as well. So I look at this team and I say to myself, Wake Forest has a lot of holes that we saw come out down the stretch against Tony Calandria and UVA. But I will say this game for Ole Miss is not about the opponent. It's about Ole Miss. And I know that we're in the Know Your Enemy segment, so I need to tell you about how Hank Brockmeyer has been flinging the ball around for forever. First at Louisiana Tech, being their starter for a few years and being in that offense where you know what Louisiana Tech is going to do, and now being in that long mesh offense where pretty much every play virtually is an RPO, and that long mesh that is so signature to Dave Clawson and Wake Forest. It gives teams trouble regardless of who is in the backfield, regardless of who is on the line of scrimmage. It's always going to give teams trouble. But again, I just think that there's too big of a talent discrepancy here for there to be a serious, kind of threat to Ole Miss in this one. But again, that Wake Forest defense, they're opportunistic. They get after it. And if you make some bad reads, bad passes, they'll be there. But again, I've seen Jaxson Dart be so spot on. It's tough to imagine a world where that happens.
So we've got the intro in. We're going to drill down on this just a little bit more with Kenton about players to watch and storylines from the game. We'll talk about that next. Looking for an easy way to stay on top of your health and wellness goals? Factor is here to help you. With Factor's no prep, no mess meals, you can fuel your body with chef-crafted, dietitian-improved dishes that fit your lifestyle. Whether you're aiming for Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, or keto options, Factor has something for everybody. And the best part, Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are ready to eat in just 2 minutes. Perfect for even the busiest of schedules. With 35 different meals and 60 different add-ons to choose from every single week, you'll never get bored. And Factor makes it easy to crush your wellness goals. Stop offering premium ingredients like filet mignon, shrimp, and blackened salmon to help your meals be both healthy and delicious. Why spend hours in the kitchen when Factor meals can be ready in just 2 minutes? No shipping, no prepping, no cleaning up. From breakfast to dessert, Factor has you covered with nutritious restaurant quality meals that make eating healthy a breeze. What are you waiting for? Head to factormeals.com/lockedon50 and use promo code LockedOnCollege50. That's factormeals.com/lockedoncollege50 and use code LockedOnCollege50 to get 50% off your first box and 20% off your next month. That's factormeals.com/lockedon50. Looking for an incredible deal? FanDuel has something that you need to take advantage of. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet just $5 and receive a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. With a YouTube TV base plan, you have access to every single Sunday afternoon out of market game. So you won't miss a single play. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment. Don't worry, you can cancel at any time. Maybe you're thinking about betting the over or the under of 63.5 points for Ole Miss. Maybe the line of 23.5 points against Wake Forest is your flavor of choice. Either way, FanDuel has you covered, and it doesn't stop there. Be sure to check out FanDuel's Profit Boost in the app. Use it to double your winnings all Sunday, 9:15 Sunday, on all pregame money line bets. Profit Boost goes live starting Thursday, 9/12. So head to your account page to learn more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook today. College football is back this weekend. It's not too late to catch up on all the action before it kicks off. Tonight, the SEC, the ACC, the Big Ten, the Big 12, these squad shows are going to be airing tonight. You can get all the information from Locked On stable of college football experts by subscribing to the Locked On College Football Podcast. Who has the chance to make the playoffs? Which teams will cause the most playoff chaos in their conference? Everything you need to know all in one place. Be sure to follow and subscribe to all the Locked On College Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now back to Thunderdome. All right, we're back with Kenton Gibbs back in Thunderdome talking about Ole Miss and Wake Forest. You called it a long mesh, which is true because they hold the ball in the belly of the running back for a long time. I've heard it called a short mesh, and that's what I've referred to all week because of where it ends up being the mesh point behind the center because of them riding it up. But we both mean essentially the same thing, and it is a completely unique thing. I compare it to a service academy type deal to where you have a week to get prepared, and it can be problematic because the angles are just a little bit different.
Not only is the angle different, the timing is different. Even if you get the angle down, you still have to master the timing. Even if you say, okay, I need to get to the tackle's hip, right? So right now we're going to talk some inside baseball. So Ole Miss fans, get ready to have your football IQ expanded a little bit. There's a thing called cue technique. It basically means that the defensive end that's being read, he gets as close to the tackle's hip as possible without giving up outside contain to the quarterback, right? Now, in most read options, that timing is very similar for most teams. It's very like a 1-2, okay, he's made a decision. And it can be tough as a defensive lineman to stay in that pocket, stay in that hip, stay in that, okay, I'm moving down the line, I'm at the tackle's hip, but I don't want to go too far. Because if I come down too far, all of a sudden Jaxson Dart's pulling it and running. As a defensive back, how do you stay in there to say, I need to play my assignment? Yes, I know I have a run fit potentially, but it's more important for me to be here on the back end to take away this glance route. It's more important for me to be on the back end to take away a potential goal ball on the outside, which they throw goals out of RPOs, which is amazing. I love to see it. Ole Miss does it as well. It's one of those things that it brings a joy to my heart because it stresses out defenses in a way that's like, who thought of that? But very seriously, they do that at a very high clip. And we saw it to start this season off. So, you look at this game and you say to yourself, it shouldn't be that hard on paper. But then, like you said, you have to deal with that difference in timing where the average zone read is 1-2. Theirs can be 1, 2, 3, post. It could be 1, 2, 3. I'm going to pull it. It could be, I've seen that mess sometimes run right into the centers behind before the quarterback pulls it. So it's not just the angles, but it's also the timing. And when you disrupt those two things defensively, we don't think about timing in terms of defense, but that's what can get a Nolan off of his spot. That's what can get your DBs to be a little undisciplined and look like some of those Ole Miss secondaries of old. That long, that holding, that I've got to be where my feet are supposed to be for a while and not take the cheese.
If you're Pete Golding and you're Ole Miss's defense, how do you handle that long or short mesh, whatever you want to call it?
Yeah, so I handle it the same way that you would handle a service academy. And I know that sounds weird, but it's the same thing. Everybody has to be where you're supposed to be. As much as we talk about the discrepancy in talent between these two teams, the place that will get tested the most is Ole Miss's secondary. Donovan Green, Taylor Morin, those are two. I know a lot of people are on Morin right now about that fumble and all that against UVA. I am telling you right now, that young man is going to get it back together. It seems like he's been playing college football for forever and a day. I mean, it seems like his true freshman year I had a strong hairline. But that is a young man that he's gonna get it together. He's gonna get better. And Donovan Green is a freak athlete as well. That secondary is going to be tested, not just because of receivers who can play with you and who can do it at the top end. You're going to be tested on your discipline. You're going to be tested on how well can I be where I'm supposed to be? How well can my eye discipline carry me to where I'm supposed to be so that I'm not abandoning my assignment to go do something that it's nice if you make that play, but this play is where I need to be. So I honestly, if I'm saying how do I defend this offense? I would say tell everybody, listen, we are slow playing everything. Show up and be where you're supposed to be. Don't worry about nobody else's gap. Don't worry about anybody else's assignment and covers. Don't worry about anything other than your keys and your rules.
And one of the things that I talked about earlier in the week on my show is this is an interior defensive line type of game. If they're going to be riding that running back up towards the line of scrimmage, you obviously want to push those guards back.
Absolutely. One of the keys to beating Wake Forest is that eliminating that ability to ride it very long. I want you to think about this for a second, right? Do a 3-second count in your head, and now imagine a center getting blasted back at about 1. What does that look like? You see what I'm saying? Imagine that 3-second count off in your head, and now all of a sudden you're showing the fact that your senior leader, who I believe was a 5th-year guy last year at center, is now gone. You're having to replace him with a fairly younger player, and you're looking at a situation where this guy hasn't played as much football at center as our last guy has. If you think about that, you're absolutely right at that standpoint of it's going to be about the interior of the defensive line. Because, again, Wake Forest offense is going to make you be disciplined. The one thing that frees you up a little bit to be a little bit undisciplined, perhaps, in moments, is a defensive front that is absolutely relentless. That is absolutely in a quarterback space, in the running back space, reestablishing the line of scrimmage to where normally Wake Forest running backs are as patient as that mesh is. So even if they have the ball, they get that little Le'Veon Bell thing going where they kind of just they'll sit behind the line, they'll look for a hole, they'll try to find something. Make that time shorter. Make that time that they have to do that much shorter, and you do that by creating push through the middle of that offense.
So Wake Forest and health-wise, how healthy are they at the moment?
Yeah, so they're compared to last year, they are extremely healthy because I know coming into the season they had their quarterback. I don't know what type of sickness or ailment it was, but their starting quarterback was out. It wasn't Brockenmeyer. It was the incumbent who was the backup for Sam Hartman the year before. But last year they had that going. Green was out with a torn ACL, all that type of stuff. This team is extremely healthy in comparison with last year. And so, you're looking at a situation where it shouldn't be a thought or doubt for Wake Forest in terms of like, hey, are we going to have our full complement of our best starters out there? I really and truly don't see too much on their injury report to imply, to me at least, hey, they're going to be down a good chunk of how do I put this? Of impact players. I want to say that all of their impact players are going to be in tow for this game. There are a few guys that are battling some nagging injuries, but nothing too serious here.
All right, when we come back, we're going to find 3 players to watch for Wake Forest for people to keep an eye on, and we will get predictions and talk about the outcome of this game and probably what you need to look for. So stick around for that. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to make sure finding the right people for the job, professionals who can make your business and take your business to the next level. That's why I'm excited to share about how LinkedIn Jobs, how they can help you out finding those quality candidates faster. And the best part is it's free. I've personally used LinkedIn Jobs when looking to fill roles, and I can tell you, it makes a world of difference. The platform helps you reach people you might not be even looking for a job, and you can't find those folks on other job boards. Sometimes the best candidates aren't actively searching, but they're open to the right opportunity. That's where LinkedIn Jobs really shine. This is an amazing thing. It's amazing how easy it is to post a job, and within 24 hours, you will likely get a qualified candidate. In fact, 86% of small businesses on LinkedIn get a solid candidate within just a day. LinkedIn just isn't another job board. It's a place where you can connect with professionals who might not actively be looking, but might be ready for the perfect role. It's huge because over 70% of LinkedIn users do not even visit other major job sites. So if you're looking to hire like a professional, head to LinkedIn Jobs/LockedOnCollege and post your job for free. That's LinkedIn.com/LockedOnCollege to post your job and find the right people faster. Terms and conditions apply. All right, we're back in Thunderdome. Ken Gibb from Locked On ACC in the house, and we are going to start wrapping this up, giving our final thoughts on the Wake Forest Demon Deacons. Ken, give me 3 players from Wake Forest that Ole Miss fans need to be paying attention to.
I mean, I think that this thing is going to be very simple, and I hate to be this guy that says, like, oh, the obvious names are the ones you should be watching out for. But damn it, the obvious names are the ones that you should be looking out for. Donovan Green is obviously going to be one of those guys that, you have to make sure you're keeping track of. Taylor Morin is another. Those two are going to be a special pass catching duo throughout the season. Hopefully they can be special enough to give Wake Forest some pretty good wins and at least be competitive in this game. But I'll tell you, on the defensive line of this group, I really and truly look at that defensive line and say to myself, how good can they be? This game will tell you. Right? You look at a guy like Pointer, who's had a very good season pass rushing so far, but he's a backup for a reason to a certain extent. You look at Bryce Ganius and Zach. I don't want to pronounce that name wrong, but Zach L is another guy that you're going to be looking at and saying, hey, this is a group to watch because they have objectively shown that they can be good at making quarterbacks really, really uncomfortable. And I'll tell you what, while Jaxson Dart has been accurate, how many times would you say he's had to move off his spot so far this season, Steven?
Maybe once or twice.
So every quarterback looks real good when you get to kind of stand back there and make a
He has been playing 7-on-7 lately. Yeah, I mean, that's what he's doing. Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying. Everybody can look good when you're having time to sit back there, review your auto insurance, call your accountant, talk about what NIL deals are coming in, then deliver the ball, right? Everybody looks good when they're doing that. But that defensive front, again, from Pointer to Gaines to Zach L., you're looking at a bunch of guys who could absolutely cause problems if they are able to get around that Ole Miss offensive line.
All right, let's flip side it a little bit. Give me a couple position groups and ways that Ole Miss looks to exploit against Wake Forest.
Yeah, so objectively speaking, that is an offensive line group for Wake Forest that, I mean, late in the game against UVA, if they can generate a push, if they can run the ball, guess what happens? They win. They win. They can milk the clock. You're up 14 points now or 13 points now. You're up 13 points. You need to be able to kind of take some of the air out. And it's a shame that even as long as that mesh is, it can't extend your drives if you just cannot create push. I think that may be the biggest discrepancy that Ole Miss has over Wake Forest. Because that Ole Miss defensive line is not only talented, they're deep. Y'all can come in waves of very, very good players. And trust me, as a guy who was in Bank of America Stadium last Saturday, when you see waves of good players from SEC defensive lines, it generally spells trouble. But in all seriousness, that's probably the biggest group that I would say you can exploit offensively. And defensively, I mean, where can't you exploit Wake Forest in terms of that secondary becomes a better question because, again, they're very opportunistic. Don't get me wrong. Their DBs, they are not the type of guys that you would say, oh, yeah, he can't catch. That's why he plays DB. But they do have that tendency, a lot like I talk about the long mesh making you take the cheese. Their DBs have a tendency to get caught up in that mousetrap. Their DBs have a tendency to say, oh, look at that thing underneath. Oh, wait, was I supposed to have a deep third? So, there's absolutely going to be some pliability in that secondary for you.
That is not good for Wake Forest because if you were to ask and say, hey, what are the 2 units that are this Ole Miss team? Where are they elite? It's the defensive line and the wide receiver position.
Yeah.
And so that is not a good combination.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, that's why I say that I would be shocked if this game was within 14 points because, again, styles don't make fighters don't make fights. Styles make fights, right? And I hate to keep harkening back to NC State, Tennessee, but going into that game, I thought it was going to be much closer than it was, but looking back at even the breadcrumbs and putting it together when I was looking at that game coming in, I said NC State's offensive line is wildly inconsistent, and NC State and Tennessee has a deep and talented defensive line. And so it kind of puts you in that mindset. And I know I shouldn't be talking good about the Big Orange on this show. I know. I'm going to shut up about them no more. But in all seriousness, when you look at that styles makes fights mentality in this game, you're looking at a situation where one team is very good in the trenches. Another team is a little bit younger, a little bit more unproven, kind of relying on some skill position guys out wide to make it happen. That's going to be tough. And then defensively, you talk about some wide receivers. You talk about some guys that are going to be not waiting long in the green room coming up. Ole Miss got a couple of them that are going to be going deep, catching balls from Jaxson Dart. So all in all, I look at this and I say to myself, this is just a really tough matchup, a really bad matchup for Wake Forest, but we'll see how it plays out.
All right, give me a score prediction in this game.
I hate to do it to them, but I've got 45-21 Ole Miss.
Okay, I'm going to go with 41-10. That's kind of where I'm living at the moment. And if the weather comes in, it could go down both sides. I think the point total will go down at that point. You're looking at a 31 or a 38 as the winning score. So we'll see. What does the weather look like for this weekend?
Yeah, so I mean, in this situation where we're talking about the weather in Wake Forest, I'm located in Raleigh, North Carolina, and so I'm only about 2 hours away from Winston-Salem. But I'll tell you this much, right? We've all heard about all of the storms and whatnot going on in the Gulf Coast. I don't think that should have too big of an effect on this game, right? Like as far as I know right now, it's just supposed to be an overcast day. So it should be a little cloudy, maybe a little windy, but we shouldn't see anything too crazy outside of that. But you're absolutely right. If we did see something that was going to affect this game in terms of the rain and all that good stuff, I wouldn't be surprised if that was like a net negative for both teams, because both of these teams like to air the ball out. Both of these teams like to, kind of find ways to generate those deep shots and drawing people open. And there's nothing that depletes that more than a wet, heavy ball. There's nothing that makes that tougher. So we'll see how the weather holds. But as of now, it should be overcast, maybe a little windy.
All right. Did they talk about this game on the ACC squad video?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. We have had a tough enough time at dealing with the other Power 4 conferences at the moment, and we didn't need to talk about this one. You know what I mean? You're looking at one of your bottom feeders taking on a big dog from another conference. With all due respect to Wake Forest, I know Wake Forest fans are going to scream at me and say, we were just in the conference championship game not too long ago. Sam Hartman ain't walking through that door. A.T. Perry ain't walking through that door. I'm sorry to tell you, those boys are not walking through that door. Kenneth Walker, who I know wasn't on that team, is not walking through that door. So, you get what you get sometimes.
Yeah, and also Ole Miss fans, they're not Vol Twitter. Vol Twitter is terrible. So sorry you had to go through that.
Hey, I made it out all right. You know what I mean? And I tell people all the time, I grew up around the game. I grew up playing the game. I grew up playing on the west side of Detroit. If you think that somebody's going to whoop the wheels off you and not tell you about it, if you think somebody's going to win a game against you and not call you everything but a good Christian, you got to be from a different neighborhood, because where I'm from, that zip code of 48228, baby, we gonna beat you. We're gonna tell you we beat you, and if you want to fight in the parking lot about it, we're gonna beat you there too. So it's Twitter, it's all right. It's social media. We use it to be social.
All right, Kenton Gibbs from Locked On ACC. Thank you for joining the show, and I hope we get to do this again at some point.
Absolutely, I'll be here anytime you need me, Steven.
All right, take care, buddy.
You too, man.